U.S. Import and Export Price Indexes, March 2021. Transmission of material in this release is embargoed until 8:30 a.m. Eastern, Wednesday, April 14, 2021. Prices for U.S. imports rose 1.2% in March, after increasing 1.3% the previous month, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics reported today. Higher fuel and non-fuel prices contributed to the advances for both months. U.S. exports also increased in March, rising 2.1%, following a 1.6% advance in February and a 2.6% increase in January. Chart 1. 1-month and 12-month percent changes in the Import Price Index, March 2020 to March 2021. Imports. U.S. import prices advanced 1.2% in March, 1.3% in February, and 1.4% in January. The 4.1% increase from December to March was the largest three-month rise for import prices since the index advanced 5.8% in May 2011. The price index for U.S. imports increased 6.9% from March 2020 to March 2021, the largest over-the-year advance in the index since a 6.9% rise for the year ended January 2012. See Table 1. Coronavirus, COVID-19. Pandemic impact on March 2021 import and export price index data. The Bureau of Labor Statistics did not make changes to either the collection method or estimation methodology for the March 2021 release of U.S. import and export price indexes. Survey response rates for March 2021 were 0.4 percentage points higher than those in March 2020. Additional information is available at www.bls.gov/covid19/import-export-price-indexes-covid-19-impacts-march-2021.htm. Fuel imports. Import fuel prices rose 6.3% in March, after increases of 11.7% in February, 8.4% in January, and 7.3% in December. The increases over the past 4 months were mostly driven by higher petroleum prices. Prices for import petroleum advanced 6.7% in March following a 32.3% rise from November to February. The price index for natural gas also increased in March, advancing 3.6% following an 18.0% increase the previous month. Import fuel prices rose 54.3% for the year ended in March, the largest 12-month advance for the index since a 68.9% increase in February 2017. The price indexes for petroleum and natural gas also rose on a 12-month basis in March, increasing 53.9% and 91.0%, respectively. All imports excluding fuel. Prices for non-fuel imports rose 0.8% in March following increases of 0.5% in February and 0.9% in January. The March advance was driven by higher prices for non-fuel industrial supplies and materials, foods, feeds, and beverages, capital goods, and consumer goods. Non-fuel import prices rose 3.8% from March 2020 to March 2021, the largest 12-month increase since the index advanced 4.8% in October 2011. Non-fuel industrial supplies and materials. The price index for non-fuel industrial supplies and materials rose 3.9% in March, after advancing 1.5% in February. The March increase was led by higher prices for metals, building materials, and chemicals. Finished goods. Prices for most of the major finished goods categories increased in March. The price indexes for capital goods and consumer goods ticked up 0.1% for the second consecutive month, and automotive vehicle prices recorded no change. Foods, feeds, and beverages. Foods, feeds, and beverages prices rose 2.0% in March, after a 1.4% increase the previous month. In March, an 11.0% advance in fruit prices and a 7.7% rise in food oil prices more than offset a 7.0% drop in vegetable prices. Table: a percent change in import and export price indexes, selected categories. Chart 2. 1-month and 12-month percent changes in the export price index, March 2020 to March 2021. Exports. Prices for U.S. exports increased 2.1% in March, after rising 1.6% in February and 2.6% in January. The 6.5% advance from December to March was the largest 3-month increase since the index was first published in September 1983. In March, Higher prices for agricultural and non-agricultural exports both contributed to the advance in export prices. The price index for U.S. exports rose 9.1% from March 2020 to March 2021, the largest over-the-year increase since a 9.4% advance in September 2011. See Table 2. Agricultural exports. Agricultural export prices rose 2.4% in March following increases of 2.8% in February and 6.0% in January. The March advance was driven by higher prices for meat, soybeans, fruit, and cotton. Prices for agricultural exports advanced 20.5% over the past 12 months, the largest over-the-year rise since the index increased 22.7% in September 2011. The 12-month increase was primarily driven by rising prices for soybeans, corn, meat, and fruit. All exports excluding agriculture. The price index for non-agricultural exports advanced 2.0% in March, after rising 5.1% from November to February. The March increase was led by higher prices for non-agricultural industrial supplies and materials, consumer goods, capital goods, and non-agricultural foods. Non-agricultural export prices increased 7.9% over the past 12 months, the largest over-the-year advance for the index since a 7.9% rise in September 2011. Non-agricultural industrial supplies and materials. Non-agricultural industrial supplies and materials prices increased 5.2% in March following a 3.5% advance the previous month. The March rise was primarily driven by an 8.1% increase in fuel prices and a 6.2% advance in chemical prices. Finished goods. Prices for the major finished goods categories were mostly up in March. Consumer goods prices rose 0.6%, the largest monthly increase since the index advanced 0.7% in September 2020. In March, the rise was led by higher prices for medicinal, dental, and pharmaceutical materials. Prices for capital goods ticked up 0.1% in March, after increasing 0.4% in each of the two previous months. Automotive vehicle prices recorded no change in March following a 0.1% advance in February. Measures of import and export prices by locality. Imports by locality of origin. Prices for imports from China increased 0.4% in March, after rising 1.1% from November to February. Import prices from China increased over the past year, rising 1.8%. The March 12-month advance was the largest over-the-year increase since a 1.8% rise in April 2012. Prices for imports from Japan increased 0.2% in March and have not recorded a monthly decline since July 2020. The price index for imports from Japan advanced 0.9% for the year ended in March. Import prices from Canada rose 3.6% in March, after increasing 14.0% from November to February. The advances in each of the past 4 months were led by higher fuel prices and drove prices for imports from Canada up 30.2% over the past 12 months. Import prices from Mexico rose 0.8% in March following a 0.7% increase in February and a 0.8% advance in January. Prices for imports from the European Union also rose in March, increasing 1.1%. See Table 7. Exports by locality of destination. The price index for exports to China increased 3.5% in March, after a 0.9% advance the previous month. The March rise was the largest one-month increase since the index was first published in December 2017, and contributed to an 11.8% advance from March 2020 to March 2021. Prices for exports to Japan rose 1.2% in March following a 5.2% increase over the 3 previous months. Export prices to Japan advanced 11.0% for the year ended in March, the largest 12-month rise since the index was first published in December 2017. The price index for exports to Canada increased 1.1% in March, after advancing 1.5% in February and 2.1% in January. Prices for exports to the European Union and Mexico also rose in March, increasing 1.2% and 2.1%, respectively. See Table 8. Terms of trade indexes. Terms of trade indexes are based on country, region, or grouping and measure the change in the purchasing power of exports relative to imports. The index for U.S. terms of trade with China increased 3.1% in March, the largest one-month advance since the index was first published in December 2017. In March, increasing export prices to China more than offset rising import prices from China. U.S. terms of trade with China advanced 9.8% for the year ended in March, the largest 12-month increase since the index was first published in December 2017. The index for U.S. terms of trade with Japan rose 1.1% in March and 10.0% over the past 12 months, the largest over-the-year advance since the index was first published in December 2017. U.S. terms of trade with the European Union and Mexico increased in March, rising 0.2% and 1.3%, respectively. In contrast, the index for U.S. terms of trade with Canada fell 2.4% in March. See Table 9. Import and export services. Imports. Import air passenger fares fell 3.6% in March, after a 1.9% increase in February and a 5.6% drop in January. The March decline was led by lower Asian fares which more than offset higher European fares. The index for import air passenger fares decreased 6.2% for the year ended in March, the smallest 12-month drop since the index fell 4.7% from December 2018 to December 2019. Import air freight prices increased 1.8% in March following a 0.7% advance the previous month. Prices for import air freight also rose over the past year, increasing 71.6%. See Table 10. Exports. The index for export air passenger fares declined 1.5% in March, after falling 4.7% in February. In March, lower European, Asian, and Latin American, Caribbean fares all contributed to the decrease. Despite the recent declines, export air passenger fares rose 16.7% for the year ended in March, the largest 12-month advance since the index increased 18.1% in August 2011. Export air freight prices increased 2.0% in March and 1.7% over the past 12 months. U.S. import and export price index data for April are scheduled for release on Friday, May 14, 2021 at 8:30 a.m. Eastern.